I'd been working nights at Union Station for about 6 years. Maintenance, mostly. Jams in the escalators, floods in the bathrooms, broken tiles that could trip someone. The usual stuff you get with a building that old and that busy. The day shift dealt with the crowds. We dealt with everything after. I liked it better that way. Fewer people meant I could actually see what needed fixing. During the day, the station was just noise and movement. At night, once the last trains cleared out and the homeless guys found their spots, the place settled. You could hear which pipes were about to go. You could spot the wear patterns on the floor tiles, figure out where to reinforce before something cracked. That was the part I was good at, reading a building, knowing what it needed before it broke down completely. Tonight had been pretty standard. A jam in the north escalator around 11. Some kind of shopping bag got caught in the mechanism. Took me and Leo about 40 minutes to clear it. Then a toilet overflow on the mezzanine level. Not as bad as it could have been. I got it shut off before it spread past the first stall. Leo Santos was the electrician on my crew. 29, skinny, good with his hands. He didn't talk much, which I appreciated. We'd been working together for 3 years. He knew the rhythms, same as I did. When to move, when to wait, when to just point and nod instead of explaining the whole thing. We finished the mezzanine around 1:30 and headed back down to do a last sweep of the main concourse. That was protocol. Walk it, check it, make sure nothing was actively on fire or flooding. Then we could clock out. The concourse was mostly empty. A couple of travelers asleep on the wooden benches. One guy I recognized, older, always wore a green army jacket. He slept near the Amtrak ticket windows most nights. Security left him alone as long as he didn't bother anyone. The floor was that polished stone they don't make anymore. Beaux-Arts style, I think. High-arched ceilings, big windows that didn't let in much light this time of night. It should have felt cavernous, but it didn't. It just felt like work. Leo checked the departure boards out of habit. Nothing scheduled until 5:40. I scanned the east wall looking for cracks, water stains, anything new. There was a spot near the old ticketing area that had been weeping a little last week. I made a note to check it tomorrow. We were almost done. I could feel it. That point in the shift where your body knows you're close to finished and starts winding down early. My shoulders were looser. My boots felt heavier. That's when Arlo flagged us down. He was near the south stairs, standing under one of those old brass light fixtures. Arlo Sims. Worked for one of the private security contractors the station used. Older guy. Maybe 41 or 42. Always looked like he ironed his uniform. He took the job seriously. More seriously than some of the younger guys, anyway. He waved us over. Not frantic, just steady. The kind of wave that meant something needed handling but wasn't an emergency yet. Leo saw him first, pointed with his chin. We walked over. "Hey," Arlo said. He had his radio in one hand, earpiece in. "You guys hear that?" I stopped and listened. Took me a second. Then I caught it. A faint alarm. Steady beeping, the kind that comes from a door sensor, not a smoke detector. "How long's it been going?" I asked. "About 10 minutes, Arlo said. "Figured it was your department." Leo was already moving toward the sound. I followed. The beeping got louder as we walked along the south wall, past the closed coffee stand and the shuttered news shop. It was coming from somewhere near the old storage corridor. That whole section had been closed off for years, or mostly closed off. We used parts of it for supplies, but the deeper areas were just empty space and old infrastructure. The sound led us to a wall section I recognized. I'd patched some cracked plaster there last month. Standard repair. Nothing fancy. Just smoothed it out, painted over it, moved on. Except now there was a door. Not an old door. A new one. Gray metal. Didn't match anything else in the station. The old doors were wood or heavy steel with brass fixtures. This one looked like something you'd see in an office building. Flat. Utilitarian. A keypad mounted next to it, the kind with a little screen and a card reader. And a light. steady red. The beeping was coming from the keypad. I stopped, stared at it. Leo stepped up next to me and tilted his head. "That wasn't here before," he said. "No," I said. "Looks new." "Yeah." He crouched down and ran his hand along the base of the door. "Install's clean, recent. See the sealant? Still a little soft." I looked. He was right. You could see where someone had caulked the edges. The caulk hadn't fully cured yet. Probably put in within the last week or two. "Temporary construction install, maybe," Leo said. He stood up, brushed his hands off on his pants. "They do any work orders down here?" I tried to remember. There'd been some HVAC stuff 2 weeks ago. Ductwork repair. But that was 3 halls over, near the loading docks. Nothing here. Nothing that would need a new door. "Not that I know of," I said. Leo frowned. He pulled out his phone, swiped through something. Probably the work order log. We both had access to the shared files. He scrolled for a minute, then shook his head. "Nothing." The beeping kept going, steady, monotonous. I stepped closer and looked at the keypad. The screen was blank except for a single red icon, a lock symbol. The card reader slot was dark. I reached for my radio, keyed it. "Dispatch, this is Valdez. You got any record of a door install near South Corridor storage? Over." Static. I tried again. "Dispatch, Valdez, come back." More static, louder this time. It crackled and hissed, then cut to silence. I checked the radio. Battery was fine. Signal should have been fine too. We were still in the main part of the station. Leo was watching me. "Nothing?" "No." He didn't say anything. Just looked at the door again. I leaned in closer, put my ear near the gap between the door and the frame. I don't know why. Instinct, maybe. Sometimes you can hear water or air pressure or something that tells you what's on the other side. I heard something. Not water, not air. A train. Distant, slow. The kind of low rumble you feel in your chest before you hear it with your ears. Metal on metal. The groan of weight shifting. It was faint, but it was there. I pulled back. "There's a train," I said. Leo blinked. "What?" "I can hear a train, underground, that direction." I pointed past the door, into the wall. "We're not near the tracks here," Leo said. "Closest platform is 200 feet north." "I know." He leaned in, listened. I watched his face. Saw the moment he heard it too. His jaw tightened. "That doesn't make sense," he said. "No." The beeping continued. The red light stayed red. The train sound rolled on, slow and endless, somewhere beneath us or behind the wall or maybe both. I looked at Leo. He looked at me. "We should open it," I said. "We don't have a key." "I know." But I was already reaching for the door handle. That's when I saw the paper. It was stuck to the wall right next to the keypad. Just a regular printed sheet, the kind that comes out of the dispatch office printer with the faded toner and the crooked margins. A work order. I leaned in. The form had our standard header. Station maintenance. Authorization code at the top. Date stamp from 3 days ago. "Look at this," I said. Leo stepped closer. The order listed door installation, south storage corridor, access to secondary utility junction. Standard stuff. Below that, in the notes section, someone had written the access code in ballpoint pen. 6 digits. Clear enough to read. I pulled my phone out and took a photo of it. Habit. Document everything that doesn't make sense, because later someone's going to ask why you did what you did, and you're going to need proof you weren't just guessing. Leo was reading over my shoulder. That wasn't on the system. I know. We would have gotten the notice. Yeah. But the paper was right there. Real ink, real form number. I touched the edge of it. Standard copy paper, a little damp from the station humidity. I figured it was some contractor job that didn't get logged right. Happens more than it should. Someone from facilities calls in a third party. The work gets done, and the paperwork sits in someone's email for a week before it gets entered. We'd spent half a shift last year trying to find a shut-off valve that got relocated without anyone telling us. The beeping was still going. That flat, rhythmic pulse. I punched in the code. The keypad screen flashed green. The red light beside it blinked twice, then went solid green. Something inside the door mechanism clicked, heavy and mechanical, and the lock disengaged with a soft, metallic thunk. I grabbed the handle and pulled. The door swung open smooth, no resistance. Well-oiled hinges, cold air rolled out. Not cold like the AC cold you get near the vents. Cold like a basement in January. Damp and still, and about 15 degrees lower than the corridor. And there was a smell. Metallic, sharp, the way a handful of pennies smells when you've been holding them too long and your palm starts to sweat. Wet metal and something else underneath it. Mineral, maybe. Stone. I stepped back half a step without meaning to. The door had opened onto a stairwell, not a closet, not a utility room. A stairwell going down. Concrete steps, narrow, with a metal railing bolted into the left wall. Overhead lighting, those long fluorescent tubes in wire cages, spaced out every 10 feet or so. The first few steps were visible. After that, the stairs turned and dropped out of sight. The walls were bare concrete, no paint, just that rough poured finish with the form lines still visible. Institutional. Old, but not falling apart. Clean, actually. No graffiti, no stains, no trash. I'd been working at Union Station for 6 years. I knew the layout. I knew where the stairs went, which hallways connected to what, where the old sections backed up against the new build. This wasn't on any map I'd seen. Leo made a sound, not a word, just a low noise in the back of his throat. I glanced at him. He was staring down the stairwell, and his face had that look. The one he gets when we open a panel and find wiring that's been chewed through, or when a ceiling tile sags in a way that means water's been pooling up there for weeks. He shook his head, small movement. Then he gestured with both hands, palms out. Universal sign for stop, back up, don't. It's just stairs, I said. He pointed at the work order, then at the stairwell, then shook his head again. Could be a breaker down there, I said, or a junction box throwing the alarm. Leo's mouth tightened. He didn't buy it. Neither did I, really, but I said it anyway. The thing is, we had a door that wasn't supposed to be there, an alarm that shouldn't be going off, and a work order that didn't match the system. If there was something down there causing the problem, I needed to see it. That's the job. You don't just close the door and walk away because it feels weird. I stepped onto the first stair. The concrete was solid under my boot. The railing was cool and slightly gritty under my hand. Standard industrial install, the kind you see in every service stairwell in the city. Leo hissed something behind me. Might have been my name. I took another step, then another. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead, that 50-cycle hum you stop noticing after a while. I heard Leo follow, slow, reluctant, but he followed. We got about 4 steps down when the door swung shut behind us. It didn't slam, just a clean, deliberate click as the latch seated. I turned fast. Leo was already moving, reaching back up the stairs, but I was closer. I got my hand on the door and pushed. It didn't move. I pushed harder, braced my shoulder against it and shoved. Nothing. Solid. Locked. Shit, I said. There was a sound then. A mechanical whir, smooth and quick, and I stepped back just as a metal grid dropped down over the door seam. It slid out from the top of the frame and locked into place with a heavy clunk. Steel mesh, the kind they use on security gates. Diamond pattern, thick gauge wire. It covered the entire door, edge to edge, and seated into slots in the concrete wall. I grabbed the mesh and pulled. It didn't budge, bolted and solid. Leo was right next to me, both hands on the grid, testing it. He rattled it once, hard, then let go. I looked at the wall beside the door, where the keypad should have been on this side. There was nothing, just blank concrete. The light that had been glowing green on the other side. I could see the faint outline of the panel housing through the mesh, but the screen was dark now. Dead. "Radio," Leo said. First word he'd spoken since we came through. I unclipped mine and keyed the mic. "Dispatch, this is Valdez. Do you copy?" Static. Then nothing. I tried again. Same result. I checked the battery. Full. Signal indicator showed nothing, not even searching, just blank. Leo pulled his phone out. He stared at the screen, tapped it twice, then held it up so I could see. No signal, no bars, no Wi-Fi. The time was still running, but everything else was dead. The beeping had stopped. I realized that a second too late after I'd already noticed the quiet. Or maybe it hadn't stopped. Maybe it was just muffled now, on the other side of the door in the mesh. I pressed my ear against the grid and listened. Faint. Distant. But yeah, still beeping. And underneath that, the rumble. That low, uneven sound. Metal shifting. Weight rolling. I pulled back and looked down the stairwell. The light stretched away into the turn. Concrete and railing and nothing else. No doors, no exit signs, no vents or panels or anything except stairs going down. Leo was watching me, waiting. I didn't want to say it, but I did anyway. "We can't call out." He nodded. "And we can't get back through the door." Another nod. I looked down again. The air coming up from below was still cold, still carried that metal and mineral smell. "So we go down," I said. Leo didn't nod this time. He just turned and looked down the stairs with me. I didn't have a better option. We could sit on the steps and wait for someone to notice we were missing, but that wouldn't happen until end of shift, and even then, they'd check the concourse first. The break room. The parking garage. It'd be hours before anyone thought to check a door that wasn't supposed to exist. I started down. Leo followed. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Our boots scuffed on the concrete, the sound flat and close in the narrow space. The railing was cool under my palm, and I kept one hand on it as we descended, counting steps without meaning to. 12 steps to the landing. Turn. 12 more. The rumble was still there, faint but constant. Off rhythm, the way a train sounds when it's idling on bad track, something in the suspension not quite seated right. We kept going down. The stairs ended. I counted 48 steps total before the last landing flattened out into a corridor. Concrete floor, concrete walls, concrete ceiling about 8 feet up. The fluorescent lights from the stairwell didn't continue down here. Just darkness stretching forward with maybe a dim glow way off in the distance. Leo stopped next to me on the landing. We both stood there for a second, catching our breath. My calves burned a little from the descent. The corridor smelled worse than the stairwell. Same metallic penny smell, but heavier now. Mixed with something damp and old, like water sitting in a closed room for months. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through maybe 10 feet of dark before it just sort of stopped, like the air was eating the light. I'd had this phone for 2 years and the flashlight had always been decent. This didn't make sense. "Stay close," I said. Leo grunted. He had his phone out too, flashlight on. Between the two of us, we could see maybe 15 feet ahead. Not great. I stepped into the corridor and swept my light along the left wall. That's when I saw the first sign. Old CTA sign, the kind they used to mount in the subway tunnels back in the 80s or 90s. Blue and white, peeling at the edges where the laminate was coming off. It had an arrow pointing left in text that read, "Red Line, Addison, Sheridan." I stopped walking. "That's not right," I said. Leo came up next to me and looked at the sign. He shook his head once, sharp. The red line didn't run through Union Station. Never had. Union Station was Amtrak and Metra. The CTA blue line ran underneath Clinton, a block west. But the red line was way over on State Street. And even if you wanted to argue some weird transfer tunnel I'd never heard of, Addison and Sheridan were both north side stops. Addison was up by Wrigley Field. Sheridan was even farther, up near Loyola. This sign made no sense here. I kept walking. 20 yards down, another sign. This one said, Brown Line, Sedgwick, Fullerton. Same peeling edges, same old CTA style. The Brown Line also didn't come anywhere near Union Station. I heard Leo's breathing behind me, steady but tight. Another 20 yards. Another sign. Purple Line. Foster, Linden. I didn't say anything, just kept moving. The corridor stayed straight. No doors, no branching tunnels, no utility panels. Just concrete and darkness, and those signs every 20 yards or so, each one advertising a line that had no business being here. Then I heard the speaker. Overhead, mounted in the ceiling, a small black speaker grid, the kind they use for station announcements. It crackled once, then a voice started. Attention passengers, the next... It cut off, just stopped mid-word. 5 seconds of silence. Then it started again. Same voice, same words. Attention passengers. The next... Cut off. I walked past it. 20 yards later, another speaker. Same thing. Attention passengers. The next... Nothing. It was like the system couldn't finish the sentence. Like it was trying to form the words but didn't have enough to work with. Every 20 yards. Same loop. Same failure. Leo touched my shoulder. I stopped and turned. He pointed at the right wall, an electrical cabinet, gray metal with a hinged door and a simple latch. Standard issue for junction routing. I'd opened 100 of these over the years. Check it? I said. He nodded. I handed him my phone so he'd have both lights, and he stepped up to the cabinet. He flipped the latch and pulled. The door came off in his hands. Not like it broke. Just came off clean, hinges and all, too easy, like it had been sitting there barely attached. Leo held the door for a second, confused, then set it against the wall. I took my phone back and aimed the light into the cabinet. No wiring. Instead, bundles, thick bundles wrapped in clear plastic zip ties, stacked from the bottom of the cabinet to the top. I stepped closer. Hair, bundles of damp hair, zip-tied together in clumps about as thick as my wrist. Different colors, brown, black, blonde, gray. Some straight, some curly. All of it damp like it had been soaked and hadn't dried yet. I didn't touch it. What the hell? I said. Quiet. Leo made a sound in his throat. He stepped back. I closed the distance and looked closer, even though I didn't want to. The hair was mixed, all different lengths and textures bundled together with no pattern. Some of the zip ties had little tags, the kind you'd use for organizing cables, but they were blank. Just white tags with nothing written on them. It was wrong. I couldn't explain why in any technical terms, but it was wrong in a way that made my stomach tighten. I stepped back. We keep moving. Leo didn't argue. We walked, past more signs, more speakers playing half announcements. The corridor stayed straight and featureless. My boots scuffed on concrete that felt gritty like it hadn't been swept in years, but when I looked down with the flashlight there was no debris, just clean gray concrete. The rumble was still there, constant, under everything, metal shifting, weight rolling, that off rhythm like a train idling on bad track. It didn't get louder or quieter, just stayed. Then the corridor opened up into a landing. Wider space, maybe 12 feet across. The ceiling was the same height, but it felt more open without the walls pressing in. My flashlight swept the area and caught something on the left side. A person. Sitting against the wall, legs out straight, back slumped, wearing a reflective vest, the yellow and silver kind track inspectors use. Dark pants, long-sleeve shirt underneath. I stopped. Leo stopped next to me. The guy's head was down, chin almost to his chest. But when my light hit him, he looked up. His face was pale, maybe mid-50s, with stubble on his jaw and deep lines around his eyes. He looked tired, really tired, but when he saw us, his expression changed. Relief. Actual relief. He lifted one hand and waved, just a little. Then he gestured, pointing at himself, then down at the floor, then around at the corridor. The gestures were loose, like he was trying to explain something but didn't have the words ready. I walked over, kept my light on him but not directly in his eyes. "Hey," I said, "you all right?" He nodded. Quick, eager. Then he pointed down the corridor we'd just come from, made a gesture like he was checking something, then pointed at the floor again and shrugged. The meaning was pretty clear. He'd come down here, got lost. "You came down to check something?" I said. He nodded again, pointed at the ground, made a dripping motion with his fingers. Water leak, probably. That made sense. I'd done the same thing a dozen times. Follow a drip, end up somewhere you didn't expect. I crouched down next to him. He smelled like sweat and that same metallic penny smell that was everywhere down here. "We're maintenance," I said. "Union Station. We're trying to get out. You been down here long?" He shook his head, held up both hands, fingers spread. 10. Maybe 10 minutes, maybe 10 hours. Hard to say. "What's your name?" He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Not like he was too quiet. There was no sound at all. His mouth moved, his throat worked, but no air. No voice, nothing. He tried again. Same thing. His lips formed shapes, but there was no sound. His eyes went wide and he touched his throat with one hand, pressing like he was trying to force the words out manually. I pulled back a little. "It's okay. Don't hurt yourself." He dropped his hand and nodded, but his face had gone tight. Scared. I unclipped my water bottle from my belt. Standard 20-ounce plastic bottle, half full. I handed it to him. "Here, drink something." He took it with both hands and drank. 3 long swallows, then he handed it back. He mouthed something that might have been, "Thank you," but again, no sound. Leo crouched down on the other side of him, shining his light across the guy's vest and pants, looking him over. I did the same. The reflective vest was real, standard issue. It had the silver strips and the yellow fabric, a little dirty but not torn. His shirt underneath was gray, long sleeve, the kind you'd wear on a cold site. Pants were dark blue work pants, but no belt, no radio clipped to his shoulder or waist, no tool bag, no flashlight, no clipboard, nothing. I looked down at his legs. No boots, just bare feet, straight out in front of him on the concrete, no socks, no shoes. The soles were blackened, like he'd been walking through soot or ash. The kind of black that cakes on and doesn't wipe off easy. His toes were dark with it, and it went up around his ankles in uneven smudges. I stared at his feet for a few seconds. "Where are your boots?" I said. He looked down at his own feet like he'd forgotten they were bare. Then he looked back up at me and shrugged. One shoulder, helpless. Leo caught my eye. He shook his head once. Small movement. Message clear. Something's wrong with this. I knew that. But I also knew I couldn't just leave the guy here. I stood up. "Can you walk?" The man nodded. He put both hands on the floor and pushed himself up. His legs shook a little, but he got upright, standing with his back against the wall for balance. He was maybe 5'10", average build. The kind of guy who could have been a track inspector or utility worker. But the missing gear, the bare feet, the inability to speak, it didn't add up. Still, he was a person. He was down here same as us, and he was clearly in trouble. "We're heading forward," I said, trying to find a way out. "You can come with us." He nodded again, faster this time, relief back on his face. Leo stood up and moved closer to me, lowering his voice. Preston, I know. He doesn't have boots. He doesn't have tools. He can't talk. I know, I said again, but I'm not leaving him. Leo looked at me for a long moment. Then he looked at the guy in the vest, then back at me. Okay, he said. Quiet. I turned back to the man. Stay between us. I'll go first, Leo behind you. We stick together. He nodded. I aimed my flashlight forward, into the corridor continuing past the landing. It looked the same as before. Concrete walls, concrete ceiling, darkness eating the light after 15 feet. But now I could hear something else under the rumble. A wet sound. Faint, rhythmic, like water dripping onto stone, but heavier, more deliberate. I started walking. The guy in the vest followed. I could hear his bare feet on the concrete, soft padding sounds that didn't echo right. Leo came last, his flashlight aimed back the way we'd come for a few seconds before he turned and followed. Another speaker overhead. Attention passengers, the next... Cut off. Another CTA sign on the wall. Orange line. Midway. Pulaski. The orange line didn't run through Union Station either. The wet sound got a little louder. Still faint, but definitely there. Drip, drip, drip. I kept my hand near my belt, where I usually clipped my utility knife. It was still there. I didn't pull it out, but I wanted to know where it was. The corridor felt different now, tighter, even though the walls hadn't moved. The air felt heavier, damp in a way that stuck to my skin. The guy in the vest stayed close behind me. I could hear his breathing, shallow and quick. Leo's footsteps stayed steady, reliable. I kept walking. The wet, dripping sound continued somewhere ahead in the dark. The rumble came first. Not the same constant idle I'd been hearing since we entered the stairwell, but something deeper. Something that started far below and rolled up through the concrete like a wave. I felt it in my boots before I heard it, a vibration that climbed through my shins and into my knees. Then the sound arrived. Low metal grinding against metal, weight shifting on bad suspension, the kind of noise a train makes when it's pulling too many cars and the couplings are about to give. Leo grabbed my arm. The rumble passed under us and kept going, moving up the corridor in the direction we'd been walking. And then the lights started clicking on, not behind us. Ahead. They came on in groups, 3 fixtures at a time, maybe 4. Click, click, click. Fluorescent tubes buzzing to life in wire cages mounted to the ceiling every 20 feet or so. The light was harsh and yellow, the kind that makes everything look sick. Each group illuminated another 20-yard stretch of corridor, and then the next group would click on, and the next. I stood there watching them march forward into the darkness, lighting up concrete and those wrong CTA signs, and the speakers still looping their half-announcements. The lights didn't turn on behind us. I looked back to check. The corridor we'd already walked through stayed dark except for our phone flashlights. "They're pushing us," Leo said. His voice was quiet, but certain. I looked at him. His face was pale in the phone light, eyes locked on the advancing line of fluorescence clicking on ahead. "Yeah," I said, because he was right. The lights were herding us forward, away from the stairs, away from the locked door and the mesh grid, deeper into whatever this place was. Leo's jaw tightened. He turned and swept his phone light along the walls, slow and deliberate. "Door," he said. "Any door." I got it. We couldn't go back. The lights were forcing us forward. But if we could find a way off this corridor, a utility room, a side passage, anything, we could break the pattern. Get out of the path they wanted us on. "Yeah," I said again. "We force it if we have to." We started moving, but not the direction the lights wanted. We went sideways, checking the right wall first. I kept my phone aimed low, sweeping across concrete. Leo did the same on the left. The rumble had faded, but the sound of our boots was loud now, echoing off the walls. Another group of lights clicked on ahead, then another. I found it 30 yards down, a door set into the right wall, painted industrial red, but the paint was flaking off in patches. Rust showed through underneath, dark orange and brown. Above the door was a sign, white letters on green backing, the kind you see in every station. Emergency exit. But the plastic was faded and cracked, the letters barely readable. "Here," I said. Leo came over fast. He tried the handle first. A plain steel lever, pitted with age. It didn't budge, locked or rusted shut. I couldn't tell. I stepped back and looked at the door. No keypad, no card reader, just an old mechanical lock under the handle, the kind that takes a physical key. I'd seen locks like that in the older parts of Union Station, the sections that hadn't been updated since the 70s. And then I remembered something. 4 years ago, maybe 5. I'd been working a shift with Marcus Webb, a supervisor who retired about a year later. We'd been replacing tile in one of the old connector hallways, and Marcus had pulled out this brass key on a worn leather tag. Cabinet key, he'd called it. Said it was from the old maintenance office, back when the station still used master cabinet locks for storage. He'd claimed it opened half the forgotten doors in the building if you knew where to try it. I'd figured he was exaggerating. Old-timers always had stories. But I'd kept a key just like it. Found it in a drawer when they cleaned out Marcus's locker after he left. Brass, tarnished, with a simple bit and a round bow. I'd tossed it on my own key ring and never thought about it again. I pulled my keys out of my pocket, unclipped them from my belt loop. The brass key was still there, third from the left, between my apartment key and the key to the equipment cage. "Trying something," I said. I slid the key into the lock. It went in smooth, smoother than it should have for a rusted door that probably hadn't been opened in decades. I turned it. The lock clicked, easy. One rotation and the bolt slid back with a soft metallic snick. Leo made a sound, not quite surprise, more like relief mixed with suspicion. I turned the handle and pulled. The door opened without resistance, hinges silent, no scrape of rust or squeal of metal, just smooth movement like it had been oiled yesterday. Cold air rolled out, colder than the corridor, and that same metallic smell, but thicker now. Pennies and damp concrete and something else underneath. Something I didn't have a name for. I stepped through. Leo followed, his phone light sweeping the space. It was a room, maybe 15 feet by 12. Low ceiling, same height as the corridor. The walls were bare concrete, same as everywhere else down here, but this room had furniture. A desk sat against the far wall. Metal frame, laminate top, the kind I'd seen in admin offices upstairs. The surface was empty except for a monitor, old CRT type, beige plastic casing, screen cracked down the middle. The monitor was off, but the crack looked fresh, spider webbing out from a central impact point. To the left were lockers. 4 of them, gray steel, narrow and tall, standard issue, the kind every station uses for employee storage. The doors were closed but not latched. One hung slightly open, and on the right wall, hooks, 6 of them mounted in a horizontal line at shoulder height. 5 of the hooks held uniforms, transit uniforms. I recognized the style. Dark blue pants, light blue shirts, reflective vests, Amtrak logos on the breast pockets, the kind of gear I wore every shift. But they were wrong. The fabric bulged in places it shouldn't. The shirts hung heavy, lumps pressing out from the inside like something solid had been shoved into them. The pants, too. Knees bent at angles that didn't match leg joints. Elbows jutted wrong. One vest had a shape pushing against the back panel, something curved and hard that stretched the silver reflective strip until it warped. I stared at them. Couldn't look away. They looked like bones. Bones shoved into fabric without joints to connect them, just hard shapes under cloth, bulging and wrong. Leo stepped past me. He didn't look at the uniforms. He went straight to the lockers and pulled the half-open door wide. Inside was an emergency kit, red plastic case, about the size of a tackle box, with a white cross on the lid, standard for employee areas. I'd restocked kits like that a dozen times. Leo flipped the latches and opened it. The top tray held the usual: bandages, antiseptic wipes, medical tape. But Leo lifted the tray out and set it on the floor. Underneath was the second compartment: flare gun, bright orange plastic grip, black barrel. The kind they keep for track emergencies, in case someone needs to signal in a tunnel. Next to it were 3 flares, red casings, intact. Leo picked up the gun, checked the chamber, empty. He loaded 1 flare, smooth and fast, like he'd done it before, then closed the breech. The other 2 flares he slipped into his vest pocket. Then he turned and held the gun out to me. I looked at it, at him. "Fire," he said. Just that one word. I got it. Fire beats a lot of things. Fire makes light, makes noise, makes people pay attention. Down here where nothing worked right and the lights herded us forward and the man in the yellow vest had no voice. Fire was something real, something that didn't lie. I took the gun. It was heavier than I expected, solid in my hand. I checked the safety. On. Good. "Thanks," I said. Leo nodded once and turned back to the locker. I clipped the flare gun to my belt opposite my radio and swept my phone light across the room again. That's when I saw the manual. It was on the desk. I don't know how I missed it the first time. Spiral bound, about the size of a standard notebook, lying flat next to the cracked monitor. The cover was blue with white text. Amtrak logo in the corner. Maintenance procedures. Track and platform safety. I'd read manuals like that. We all had. Required training. I walked over and picked it up. The cover felt normal. Laminated cardstock, a little worn at the edges. I flipped it open. The first page was a table of contents, standard categories: electrical systems, hydraulic lifts, emergency shutdown procedures. The text was printed, clean and professional. I turned the page. Section 1. Electrical safety. Diagrams of breaker boxes and voltage ratings. Normal. I kept flipping. Section 2. Platform maintenance. Inspection schedules and surface repair protocols. All normal. Then Section 4. The text changed. It was still printed for the first few lines. Standard procedures for pressure washing and debris removal. But halfway down the page, the printed text stopped and handwriting took over. Ballpoint pen, blue ink, neat block letters. Reset procedure. Platform 7. I stopped. Platform 7 didn't exist at Union Station. We had platforms numbered 1 through 6 for Metra and lettered gates for Amtrak. No 7. I kept reading. When the tiles crack in sets of 3 and the lights hum lower than the rails, the platform is losing its grip. To reset, stand at the yellow line during the empty hour and breathe outward for 60 seconds without pause. The offering must be complete. Do not inhale until the rails stop singing. I read it again. It didn't make more sense the second time. I turned the page. More handwriting. Different pen this time. Black ink. Sloppier. If the stairs fold back on themselves, do not count the steps. Counting gives them weight. Walk without rhythm and they'll let you pass. Another page. The lost voice accumulates in junction room C. Collected in a glass container. Seal tightly. Do not listen to what it says when the lid is off. My hands felt cold. I flipped faster. The whole manual was like that. Printed text for the first few sections, then page after page of handwritten instructions. Different pens, different hands. Instructions for things that didn't exist. Procedures for problems that didn't make sense. I reached the last page. It was blank except for one sentence, written in red ink at the bottom. If you're reading this, you're already on the list. I closed the manual fast. The cover didn't feel like cardboard anymore. It felt warm, textured. I looked down at it in my hand, and the lamination caught the phone light wrong, showing grain, fine grain, like leather, like skin that had been stretched and dried. I dropped it. The manual hit the desk with a flat slap, and I stepped back, wiping my hand on my coveralls. Preston. Leo's voice, quiet, tense. I turned. He was standing by the door we'd come through, head tilted, listening. I listened too. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, the soft pad of bare feet on concrete, coming from the corridor outside. They stopped just beyond the door. I couldn't see anything through the gap. The corridor outside was dark, our phone lights only reaching a few feet past the threshold. But I knew someone was there, standing just out of sight, patient. The man from the landing, the one with no voice and no shoes. He'd followed us. Leo looked at me. I looked at the desk. "Help me," I said. We moved fast. Leo grabbed one end of the desk, I grabbed the other. It was heavy, but we lifted together and carried it to the door, set it down lengthwise, blocking the frame. Then the chair from behind the desk. Then I grabbed one of the lockers and dragged it over, metal screeching on concrete, and wedged it against the desk. It wasn't much. Wouldn't hold for long if someone really wanted in, but it was something. The footsteps outside didn't move, didn't retreat, just stayed there, waiting. I stood back and looked at the barricade, at the room, at the uniforms hanging on the wall with their wrong bulges, at the manual on the desk with its skin cover. The fluorescent light overhead flickered once, twice. The room wasn't going to stay normal. I could feel it already, the way the walls seemed a little further apart than they'd been a minute ago, the way the air tasted metallic on my tongue. We'd bought ourselves time. Maybe, but not much. The monitor blinked on. I wasn't touching it. Neither was Leo. We were both standing near the barricaded door, listening to those bare feet outside in the corridor, and then I heard a soft electrical hum, and the screen lit up behind me. I turned. The CRT monitor on the desk glowed pale blue, then resolved into a live feed. Not static, not snow. A clear image of the main concourse upstairs at Union Station. Empty, completely empty. The wooden benches sat in their rows with nobody on them. No sleeping travelers, no old man in the green army jacket. The departure boards hung dark. The brass fixtures threw soft yellow light across the marble floor, which looked freshly cleaned. Spotless. I could see the main entrance doors standing wide open to Canal Street, and through them the streetlights outside were on, casting orange glow onto the sidewalk. It was our station. I recognized every fixture, every tile pattern, the exact angle of the Amtrak ticket windows. But it was wrong. Too clean. Too still. Nobody walked through. Nobody waited. Just empty space with the doors open to the street. Leo stepped closer and I heard his breath catch. The feed didn't waver or flicker. It was steady, high definition, better than our actual security cameras, which were all old analog units that left grainy footage. This looked crisp. Real. Then the view changed. No cut, no transition. The image tilted and pulled back, and suddenly we were looking at our corridor, the one just outside this room, from a high angle, like the camera was mounted in the ceiling looking straight down. I could see the concrete floor, the fluorescent lights in their wire cages, the red door we'd barricaded shut now standing open, and centered in the frame, directly in the middle of the hall, stood the man in the reflective vest. Jacob Burke. That's what I started calling him in my head. I don't know why. He needed a name, and that one felt right. He stood perfectly still, arms at his sides, feet bare and blackened with soot, and his head tilted back. Way back. Too far back. The angle was wrong, past the point where a neck should bend, like someone had grabbed his skull and wrenched it until the tendons gave. He stared straight up at the ceiling, at the camera, at us watching him through the monitor. His mouth hung open, just a dark circle, no expression, no movement. Leo said something quiet in Spanish, a prayer maybe, or a curse. I couldn't look away from the screen. The angle was directly above him, which meant there was a camera in the ceiling right outside this room, which meant something was watching, recording, broadcasting this feed to a dead monitor that shouldn't work. Jacob Burke's chest didn't move. He wasn't breathing, or he was breathing so slowly I couldn't see it. The image stayed fixed. No pan, no zoom. Just that overhead view of a man standing in a corridor with his head bent backward and his bare feet planted in the grit. I stepped back from the monitor and my hand went to the flare gun on my belt. Leo saw the movement and nodded once, already moving toward the barricade. We had to go. Now. Before that thing outside decided to stop waiting, I grabbed the chair off the desk and dragged it back. Metal legs scraped concrete. Leo pulled the locker away from the door and I shoved the desk to the side just enough to clear the doorway. The whole time I kept glancing at the monitor. The feed didn't change. Jacob Burke stood in the same position, head tilted back, staring up. I pulled the door open fast and stepped through with the flare gun raised. The corridor stretched ahead, empty and fluorescent lit. No Jacob Burke, no figure in a reflective vest, just concrete and lights, and that constant low rumble underneath everything. But directly in front of the door, maybe 3 feet from where I stood, sat a neat pile of teeth. Stacked. Not scattered, not dumped. Stacked like poker chips in a casino. Each tooth placed carefully on top of the last, building a small white tower maybe 4 inches tall. Molars on the bottom for stability. Incisors and canines higher up, all clean. No blood, no tissue, just enamel and root dry and precise. I stopped. Leo stepped out beside me and saw it too. He made a sound in his throat and raised his phone light. The teeth gleamed under the fluorescent tubes. Human teeth. Adult teeth from the size. Maybe 30 or 40 in the stack, arranged with care, like someone had taken their time. Like it was an offering, or a message. I looked down the corridor to the left. Empty. Looked right. Also empty. But I could feel it. The weight of being watched. The same feeling you get standing on a platform when a train's coming and you hear the rails start to hum before you see the headlight. Leo touched my shoulder and pointed, not at the teeth, past them, down the corridor to the right where the lights continued in their wire cages. I saw movement. Slow, deliberate. A figure stepping out from behind one of the support columns maybe 40 feet away. Jacob Burke. Same reflective vest, same bare feet. But his head sat normal now, upright, and he walked toward us with an easy rolling gait, not threatening, almost casual. He lifted one hand in a small wave like he was greeting co-workers in a break room, then gestured broadly down the corridor behind him, beckoning, inviting. His mouth moved in what might have been a smile. He pointed at himself, then at us, then down the hall. The meaning clear. Follow me. I know the way out. I can guide you. He took another step closer, his hand still raised, still gesturing. Come on, this way. Trust me. And that's when I saw his fingers. They bent backward. Not at the knuckles where fingers hinge, at the second joint. The middle bones curved the wrong direction, flexing outward in a way that would snap tendon and crack bone. But his hand kept moving smoothly like it was normal. Like he didn't notice. His index finger arced back almost to his wrist and straightened again, fluid and impossible. I looked at Leo and caught his eye. I shook my head once, firm. We're not following. Leo nodded. He'd seen it too. Jacob Burke stopped walking. His hand dropped. The smile faded. He stood there in the middle of the corridor, maybe 30 feet away now, and tilted his head. Not back like on the monitor. Just to the side. Curious, confused why we weren't coming. Then the air behind us warmed. Not a little, a lot. Like stepping past a furnace exhaust or standing too close to a heating vent when it kicks on. The temperature spiked 15, maybe 20 degrees in the span of a breath. I felt it roll across my shoulders and neck, thick and damp and carrying that metallic penny smell. Something huge exhaling. That's what it felt like. Something massive and close, breathing out slow and steady right behind us in the room we'd just left. I didn't turn around, didn't look. I grabbed Leo's arm and pulled him forward, past the pile of teeth, past Jacob Burke, who watched us with that tilted head, and we ran. The corridor didn't stay straight. It should have. I'd walked it already. Straight passage, no turns, just signs and speakers every 20 yards. But now it curved. Gentle at first, then sharper. The left wall angled inward and the right wall pulled back, and we were moving through a bend that hadn't existed before. We passed a junction. A side passage branching left. I didn't remember a junction. We kept going and hit another split, this one branching right, and then the corridor opened into a wider section before narrowing again into a bottleneck barely 4 feet across. Leo stayed close. I could hear his breathing, fast and controlled. My boots hit concrete in rhythm with his. The rumble below us grew louder, or maybe closer, the vibration traveling up through the floor in pulses. The passage split again. 2 routes, one left, one right. Both identical. Same lights, same concrete, same width. I picked left because it was closer and we ran through, and 30 feet later the corridors joined back together into a single passage. Like a loop. Like the split didn't matter because both routes led to the same place. That wasn't possible. The geometry didn't work. But I saw it happen. Saw the 2 passages merge back into one with no transition, no seam, just concrete flowing together. We kept moving. The passage opened up, widened. The ceiling rose from 8 feet to maybe 12, and the walls pulled back into a broader space. A platform. Old. Real old. The kind I'd seen in photos of the original Union Station from the 1920s, before the renovations. Concrete platform, maybe 60 feet long, raised 3 feet above the track bed. Metal support columns every 15 feet with peeling green paint. And tracks. 2 sets of rails running parallel through the space. But the tracks were filled with dirt. Not covered. Filled. Packed earth and clay rising up to rail level, burying the ties and ballast, turning the track bed into a smooth dirt path. The rails themselves sat half submerged, just the tops visible, streaked with rust. I stopped at the platform edge. Leo stopped beside me. We both stared. The dirt looked old, settled, compressed, like it had been there for years, maybe decades. I could see patterns in it, lines and furrows and shapes. Raised mounds every few feet, evenly spaced down the length of the track. I didn't want to know what was buried under those mounds. Leo pointed, not at the tracks, at the wall behind the platform. Route maps. 3 of them. The laminated kind that used to hang in every CTA station, showing the full system in colored lines with dots for stops, framed in metal brackets bolted to the concrete. We walked closer. I pulled out my phone and aimed the light. The first map looked normal. Standard CTA layout. Red line running north-south on state. Blue line cutting northwest to O'Hare. All the familiar routes in their familiar colors. Except for one detail. A red dot. Deep in the map. Below the loop. Below everything. In a space that should have been blank white, down where no lines ran, someone had drawn a small red circle in permanent marker. And next to it, in tiny, precise handwriting, a label. Preston Valdez. My name. My full name. Marked on a map of the CTA in a location that didn't exist. I felt cold. Not from the air, from inside. Leo moved to the second map and I followed. Same CTA layout, same colored lines. But this one had a red dot too. Different location. Still deep below the loop, but offset to the west. And next to it, in the same tiny handwriting, Leo Santos. Leo reached out and touched the dot. His finger pressed against the laminated surface. He jerked back. Fast. His hand pulled away and he shook it once hard, like flicking off water. He held up his palm and I shone the light on it. Wet. His fingertip glistened. But not with water. With something thicker, darker. He pointed at the map. At his dot. And I saw it. The red circle pulsed. Not visibly. Not glowing. But I could see the laminate flexing, bulging outward slightly, then settling back. Like something underneath was breathing. Pushing against the surface. The paper behind the plastic looked wet now. The ink spreading in a slow bloom. I stepped back. Leo wiped his hand on his vest, his face tight. A sound behind us. Not footsteps. A voice. Clear. Firm. Female. Professional. I turned. A woman stood at the far end of the platform, maybe 40 feet away. Transit police uniform. Dark blue tactical pants. Light blue shirt. Duty belt. Badge on the chest. Hair pulled back tight in a bun. She looked official. Competent. Real. She gestured. Not speaking, just pointing. First at us, then at herself, then toward a doorway I hadn't noticed before at the end of the platform. An exit. Stairs visible beyond the threshold, leading up. She gestured again. More insistent. Come on. This way. Stairs. Safety. We can get out. I almost believed her. Almost moved. Because she looked right. Sounded right. Everything about her presence said authority and help and rescue. But Leo grabbed my arm. Tight. He pointed at her belt. I looked. The duty belt hung around her waist with standard loops and pouches. But they were empty. Every single one. No radio, no cuffs, no baton or taser or gun. Just empty leather loops and blank pouches, the snaps undone, showing nothing inside. Transit police didn't walk around unarmed. Didn't walk around with empty belts. That wasn't protocol. That wasn't real. I looked at her face. She smiled. Encouraging. Beckoning. Her hand waved us forward. Then I looked down. At the platform concrete. At the lights overhead. At her shadow. It stretched the wrong direction. The fluorescent tubes were mounted in the ceiling directly above us. Our shadows fell straight down, pooled at our feet. But her shadow stretched to her left, long and thin, cast by a light source that didn't exist. And as I watched, the shadow moved, not with her, independent. It shifted 6 inches to the right while she stood perfectly still. I heard bare feet on concrete behind me. I turned, slow. Jacob Burke stood at the other end of the platform. Same reflective vest, same bare feet, soot blackened and leaving faint prints in the grit. He didn't gesture, didn't move, just stood there watching, with his head tilted slightly, mouth closed, eyes steady. I looked back at the woman, at Amy Jenkins. That's what I called her. Another name that felt right. She still smiled, still gestured, still pointed at the stairs, and I understood. Same presence, different disguises. Jacob Burke when they wanted us to follow someone helpless. Amy Jenkins when they wanted us to follow someone with authority. Different faces, different approaches. Same thing underneath wearing masks and trying to hurt us deeper. I looked at Leo and he looked back, and I saw in his expression that he'd figured it out too. We were boxed in. Platform behind us. Amy Jenkins blocking the exit ahead. Jacob Burke blocking the way we'd come. And somewhere in the dirt-filled tracks, something shifted. I heard it. Felt it. A low rumble and the faint scrape of metal on stone. I unclipped the flare gun from my belt and clicked off the safety. Amy Jenkins's smile faded. Jacob Burke took one step forward. The maps on the wall pulsed. The lights went out, All of them at once, the fluorescent tubes overhead, the fixtures mounted on the columns, everything. Just darkness and the hum of something big idling below. Leo screamed. Not a shout or a yell, a scream, pure pain, the kind that comes when your body does something it shouldn't be able to do, high and sharp and wrong. I yanked the flare gun off my belt, thumbed the safety, and fired toward the sound. The flare hissed out in a streak of red sparks and hit the platform 20 feet from me, skittering across the concrete and throwing light up the columns in hard, flickering shadows. Red light. Everything washed red. Jacob Burke was crouched over Leo, not biting, pressing his mouth to Leo's face. Mouth to mouth but reversed, like he was inhaling instead of breathing in. His shoulders were hunched and his hands were flat on Leo's chest, pinning him down, and his bare feet were braced wide on the concrete. Leo's arms were thrashing but not connecting, just flailing at Burke's sides like he couldn't coordinate his hands anymore. Burke's throat was working, pulling, swallowing air that wasn't air. Leo made a sound, a wheeze that didn't finish. I took a step forward and Amy Jenkins moved into the light. She was standing 10 feet to the left, still in that transit cop uniform with the empty duty belt. She didn't look at Burke or Leo, just at me. She raised one hand and pointed at Leo, then shook her head slowly. Gone. Already lost. Then she pointed at me and gestured palm up, like an offer. Surrender. Bargain. You could still walk out. I didn't move. Burke pulled back from Leo's face, and Leo's head lolled to the side. His eyes were open, blank, not focused on anything. His chest was still rising and falling, but shallow, too shallow, and his hands had stopped moving. The flare was burning down, maybe 30 seconds left. I backed up, 1 step, 2. My shoulders hit the wall behind me and I pressed flat against it, hands searching the concrete to either side. My right hand hit a seam, a door frame. I hadn't seen it before, but I felt it now. Metal edge set into the wall, painted over with the same grime as everything else. I fumbled for my keys. My fingers were shaking and the key ring slipped once, but I caught it and found the brass key. Third from the left. Marcus Webb's skeleton key that opened half the forgotten doors in the building. I jammed it into the lock I couldn't see and turned. It clicked. The door opened inward and I shoved through and slammed it behind me. Narrow shaft, maybe 3 feet across. Ladder rungs bolted to the wall going straight up into darkness. No light, just the faint glow from my phone stuffed in my chest pocket. I grabbed the first rung and started climbing, hand over hand, boots on metal. The rungs were solid, cold, slightly rusty under my palms. I didn't look down, didn't think about what I'd just left on the other side of that door. Leo. I left Leo. I climbed faster. The rungs bit into my hands and my shoulders burned, and I kept going because stopping meant getting caught. That was it. That was the only thought I had room for. Below me, muffled through the door, I heard a wet dragging sound. Heavy, deliberate. Something being pulled across concrete. I looked down. Mistake. Through the gaps in the ladder I could see the door I'd come through. It was cracked open now, just an inch. And through that gap, I saw movement. Burke dragging Leo toward the buried tracks, one hand fisted in the back of Leo's vest, pulling him along like a sack. Leo's hands were still moving, fingers twitching, scraping at the platform, but his eyes were blank, totally empty. Burke stopped at the edge of the platform where it met the dirt-filled track bed. He crouched down and pressed his hand to one of those raised mounds in the earth. The mound shifted. Something underneath pushed up like it was breathing. I looked away and climbed. Halfway up the shaft, started shaking. Not a tremor, a sustained vibration, rhythmic and wrong, like something massive turning over in its sleep. The rungs buzzed under my hands and the walls seemed to flex inward, concrete bowing like ribs expanding. The rungs turned slick, not wet, slick, like the metal was sweating, warm and oily, and my hands slipped on the next grip and I caught myself hard on the rung below, my chin slamming into the ladder and my teeth clacking together. I tasted blood. Below me, something started climbing. I heard it, nails on metal, fast, scraping in quick bursts, not rhythmic like footsteps, but erratic like it was pulling itself up using all four limbs. I didn't look. I climbed faster, ignoring the burn in my arms and the slickness on the rungs and the sound getting closer below me. The shaft narrowed and I had to angle my shoulders to fit, and the walls were close enough now that I could feel them without touching, radiating heat that smelled like rust and something organic. The top of the shaft appeared, a hatch, flat metal, no handle, just a smooth surface with a seam around the edge. I slammed my shoulder into it. It flexed, barely. A quarter inch of give and then nothing. I hit it again. Same result. The scraping below me was maybe 20 feet down now. 15. I pressed my palms flat against the hatch and shoved, and nothing happened, and my brain was white noise and panic, and then I remembered. The manual. The spiral-bound manual with the handwritten instructions in blue ink. Stand at the yellow line during the empty hour and breathe outward for 60 seconds without pause. A complete offering. Breath as offering. I put my mouth to the seam where the hatch met the frame and exhaled. Long and steady, every bit of air in my lungs pushed out through that gap, warm and deliberate, until my chest was empty and my ribs ached and I had nothing left. The hatch popped open. Just like that. No resistance. It swung up on hinges I hadn't seen, and I shoved through and rolled onto solid floor, kicking the hatch shut behind me. Tile. Bright white tile under my hands, clean and glossy, reflecting overhead fluorescents that were too bright after the dark. I blinked and pushed myself up and looked around. Baggage area. I knew this space. Behind the Amtrak ticket counters, where they used to store luggage before the new system went in. But it was cleaner than it should be. The tile wasn't scuffed. The walls weren't marked. Everything looked fresh, like it had just been installed. I got to my feet and ran. Down the corridor, past the old luggage racks, through the access door that shouldn't have been unlocked but was, and out into the main concourse. Travelers. 2 of them. A man and a woman standing near the north entrance with a rolling suitcase and a tote bag, both staring at me. I stopped. They kept staring. The man was tall, maybe 6'1", dark blonde hair, hoodie and jeans. The woman was shorter, brown hair, light jacket, holding the tote bag in front of her like a shield. They both looked wary, not confused. Wary. I looked down at myself. Coveralls filthy. Hands black with grit, breathing hard. I probably looked like a problem. "I'm maintenance," I said. My voice came out rough. "I work here." The man nodded slowly but didn't relax. The woman took a half step back. I reached for my radio and thumbed the button. Static. Then a voice. "Dispatch." Clear as anything. "Dispatch, this is Valdez," I said. "I need supervisor and security to the main concourse. I'm reporting a missing crew member and a sealed access point that needs immediate investigation." The dispatcher confirmed and said units were en route. I clipped the radio back to my belt and stayed where I was. The 2 travelers kept watching me but didn't leave. I didn't move. I just waited. Tiffany Griffin arrived first. Transit police sergeant, auburn hair, steel blue eyes, clean uniform with a fully stocked duty belt. She had another officer with her, tall guy, short black hair, name tag reading Lawson. Behind them came 2 station staff in Amtrak polos. Griffin walked up to me and stopped 3 feet away, taking in my appearance with a quick sweep. "Valdez," she said. "Yeah. You reported a missing crew member." "Leo Santos," I said. "Electrician on my shift. We went down into a service access off the south storage corridor and he was taken. Attacked. I got out but he didn't." "Taken," Griffin repeated. Flat. Not disbelieving but not buying it either. Yeah, show me. I led them down the south wall, past the shuttered coffee stand and the closed news shop, to the section of wall where the gray door had been. It wasn't there. Just wall. Old paint, the same off-white as the rest of the corridor. Patchwork plaster repair where I'd fixed the crack last month. No door, no keypad, no card reader, no seam. I put my hand on the wall where the door had been. Solid, cold, just concrete and plaster. It was here, I said. Griffin stepped up next to me and ran her hand along the wall. You're saying there was a door? Gray metal, keypad next to it. Work order taped to the wall with an access code written in pen. And you went through it. Yeah. Me and Leo. It locked behind us. We went downstairs, through corridors, found a platform with buried tracks. That's where he was taken. Lawson was checking the wall higher up, knocking on it with his knuckles. Solid. Griffin looked at me. You see anyone else down there? I thought about Jacob Burke, about Amy Jenkins, about their wrong shadows and empty eyes. Yeah, I said. Two. A man in a reflective vest and a woman in a uniform like yours. They weren't real. Griffin's expression didn't change. Not real. No. She nodded slowly and stepped back. Lawson, get maintenance to check the wall. I want to know if there's any hollow space behind this section or recent construction. Valdez, you're coming with me to file a report. They searched for 40 minutes, brought in a supervisor with keys to every locked room in the south corridor, checked the storage areas, the old ticketing office, the utility closets. Nothing. No gray door, no stairs, no platform. I stood there the whole time with my hands in my pockets and my nails digging into my palms. There was black grit under my nails. I could feel it. Packed in tight. When I pulled my hand out and looked, the grit was still there. Fine and dark, smelling like wet pennies. Only thing I had. Griffin took my statement at 05:30. I told her everything. The door, the stairs, the corridor with the wrong CTA signs, the platform, the figures that looked human but weren't, and Leo screaming when the lights went out. She wrote it all down without comment and said they'd follow up and I should go home and come back tomorrow to talk to the shift supervisor. I nodded. At 06:15, the sun was coming up outside and I walked out to my truck in the employee lot. Blue Ford, 10 years old, parked in my usual spot under the light post. I unlocked it and climbed in and sat there with the door open and my hands on the wheel. The spiral-bound manual was sitting on the passenger seat. Blue cover, white text, maintenance procedures, track and platform safety. I didn't remember bringing it out. Didn't remember grabbing it from the desk in that room with the hanging uniforms. But there it was. I stared at it. The cover puckered once, a slow ripple from the center outward like something breathing underneath the laminate. Then it went still. I closed the truck door, started the engine, and drove home. Leo wasn't coming back. I knew that. They could search all they wanted. Check the employee records, pull the security footage, interview every person who worked that shift. They wouldn't find him. Not in any place they could reach. And something under Union Station had my breath now. My name. I drove west on Jackson and didn't look back.